Hello and welcome. I'm Tim and this is TimBatSea. And today we are getting ready to exit the port of San Juan, Puerto Rico. This piece of video was actually shot on my first week that I came down here. So I've had it for a little while, but finally getting around to putting it together for you guys. Some of you guys might remember that Captain John, my relief, the guy who's on while I'm off, was good enough to stay a week to help me out, showing me the new paperwork and showing me where to go and who to call and all that sort of stuff. And so he's here with me. So is Luke, my new mate that I have with me. And right here, you can't really hear it because I've turned the audio down in the doghouse there, but he's standing behind me and I'm telling him, you know, what my thoughts are when I'm backing up. For an example, when I back up here, I need to back up here to connect our wire to their bridle to get on the wire before we come off the dock. But I'm telling him that I probably am trying to watch my angle so that we don't fall. If we fall underneath the rake of the barge there, instead of going on the rubber fender will miss it because of the rake and it will go metal to metal. So I have to be careful of that. But for those that aren't familiar with the channel and what we do here, previously for years I had been doing bunker work in New York Harbor, and that was where we were taking fuel to ships and dropping barges off at ships and sometimes moving stuff around from terminal to terminal. But down here in Puerto Rico, we're on a different contract at a different boat, and down here we primarily get fuel from St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and we bring it to the Puerto Rican power plants. And we move what we call number 2 fuel, which is undyed diesel. And when I say the power plants, these aren't like reciprocating engines. These are great big power plants. Most of them are steam. Some of them are, you know, steam that run turbines and to produce electricity. Other ones are gas turbine themselves without the steam plant at all. But generally, I think most of these, I'm not 100% sure on this because I'm not an engineer, but I think that most of these, the way this works is that people go and, not people, but the power plants actually burn 6 oil, which is usually much more economical to burn because it's a byproduct from when they dig up when they pump off the crude and they make diesel and gas and jet fuel and that sort of stuff, home heating oil. Sometimes they're left with a by-6 oil, which is almost like asphalt. It's kind of got that consistency of like really thick paint, and it has to be heated up to like 140 degrees just to move. But I don't think they can burn that stuff on its own. I think that to start a plant up and to keep everything running well, they have to get a lot of heat, and that heat is generated from the 2 oil that we move. And I would imagine, although I don't know, I would imagine that over time, even though their pipes are insulated, that the pipes tend to get almost like the cholesterol in probably my arteries, where it gets the piping gets smaller and smaller because the cooling 6 oil starts to turn into asphalt around the edges. So by shooting number 2 oil around there, that loosens it all up and thins it all out. I don't know that they do that, but that's just what I suspect they're doing. But what we're doing over here is we have to come over and pick up the bridle. And what that means is that on either side of the barge are these great big destroyer chains that add weight to the whole bridle. And so on the port side, there's a big destroyer chain that goes to a big 600 or 800 pound steel triangle called a fish plate, and that goes into one side of the triangle, and then on the starboard side that goes into the other side of the triangle, and then the front side of the triangle there's like a 3-inch wire or 2 3/4-inch wire or whatever, great big wire that goes to a pennant that goes off to a socket, and all of that is hauled up to the bow of the barge when we're when we're not towing anymore. And they do that because keep in mind that before this thing pumped off, this barge was probably 15 or 16 more feet deeper in the water, so all that stuff could hang down and potentially get caught on something on the bottom, and that'd be a situation none of us would want. So they haul that up on deck, and it also makes it easier for us to connect into it. But we can't just send our wire up there because our wire weighs literally tons. So we send up this soft line on the suitcase drum, and if you remember, we have a double drum winch. Unfortunately, the second view of the camera, the doghouse that I've put over here, is hiding the winch, so you can't see it very well. But we send up this soft line, and then the tankerman connects it to their pennant. Now he's lowering the pennant in the water, and I start pulling the pennant aboard. And then once I get that aboard, then we'll shackle it in with a 40-ton shackle, socket to socket. Incidentally, the view here in the doghouse, remember this is one of the first videos that I made down here in Puerto Rico. This is not an ideal view. I wanted to show you looking out the window, but you really don't need to look out the window because the back camera is showing such a good view of that. I think in the future, some of my patrons have suggested that I have a camera overhead in the doghouse so you can see me working the throttles and working the winch and working the steering and that sort of stuff. So maybe we'll do that in the future. Right there, the wire was coming up over the Texas bar, and it was kind of I suppose brute force could have pulled it on really hard, but I don't want to mess up the wire, and so just move the tug back a little bit. The wire slides onto a softer part of the rail. We roll it over, and now I'm telling everyone that to wait for the tug to get stable, because while I move back and forth, there's so much weight on that wire. If that wire jumps forward or back a foot, it's enough that it could kill a man. So I want everybody to stay away from the wire until the tug has settled down and is more stable. Now, if the tug and the barge were to separate or get closer to each other at 90 degrees from each other, that wouldn't move the wire as much as it would if the tug went forward or back. That would increase the odds of or the potential for somebody on deck getting hurt. So as I see things move around, I yell at the chief and say, "Hey, hang on a second, wait, let me get this stable first, and then you can come over." And what he's going to do is he puts this 40-ton shackle through one of the thimbles or sockets, and then puts the pin through the other one, tightens it up, and then once they get it set, the nut on the end of the bolt that he puts through has a hole through it, and they put this great big stainless steel cotter pin. It's like a 8-inch cotter pin. They put it in there and bend it over to ensure that it won't unscrew while we're underway. So I'm sure this might seem like boring video, but this is kind of how it really works. It's not all running the boat here and there. Sometimes we just gotta wait, and everyone's got a job to do, and you just have to do it, and do it safely, and make sure that nobody gets hurt. So now I believe he's got everything all set. So now I'm going to pay out the wire. Oh, you know what he's doing? The chief is going and unshackling the soft line that we picked up the other wire with, the pennant with. So now it's a matter of giving a little bit of slack in the wire, going up and making up on a headline, and then tightening up the two and putting up a stern line, and then we'll be made up heads and tails. I think for the purpose of moving things along here, I'm going to stop here and try to increase the speed of this last little bit of video so you guys don't have to suffer through this. So now after we have gotten our headline on and we've pulled the wire back here, we don't want to, we had kind of a problem. That's that we're going to have to drive out into the middle of the harbor and get through a channel and get into the open part of the harbor to get out in front of the barge. And we might encounter some swell out there. And if you notice, in order for me to do this, if I'm just using the wire as a stern line right now, that would be all right here, and to go nice and slow and not put a lot of... The wire does really well when you pull it straight, but when you bend it around things, especially real sharp angles, it doesn't like that when you put a lot of strain on it. And where a lot of strain comes from is that when, even if you're made up to the barge, you're fine, and then all of a sudden we hit a swell, the barge weighing, I think the barge weighs like 2,600 tons light, not meaning with no product in it, where we only weigh 350 tons. So as we move up and down, all of our weight goes onto the wire and onto those pinch points. And so what I'm doing here is we've set up a soft line as a stern line. We'll use that to pull over, and then once we get the wire, there we go. Now I've pulled over, I've made it tight. We'll be towing not only on that soft line, but we'll also be towing on the rubber, the resistance between the rubber fenders and the barge. We'll be towing that, and I've just relax the wire now. When I say relax the wire, I take the tension off the wire so that those pinch points aren't experiencing all the stress on them that they normally would be. But I don't want to put a whole ton of slack in there because I don't want it to catch on anything on the bottom, or because it's going right over by the Texas bar, I don't want it to get near the propellers. Remember that we have quart nozzles, and I've said this in all the other videos, but very hard to get a wire in a quart nozzle boat in the wheels. But it's not impossible, and I'm terrified that I'm going to be that guy. So that's what I've done here.
I just want to lift it up a little bit.
So now I think what we're doing here is we're kind of hanging out, and we're waiting for people to show up, the pilot and that sort of stuff. We're made up. We're waiting for traffic to get by. Now we've been off the dock. The sun has gone down, as you can see, and we are in the open part of the harbor. So now I'm starting up the tow winch again, and the first thing we have to do is take in that soft line. So I'm relaxing the winch. The chief is pulling out the slack. The tankerman is taking up the line, and he's going to drop that on deck.
Chief, we'll get that later. Can you let the bow line in? Let me know when you're good.
Now you probably heard all that, but the chief is going to walk up to the bow. I can't see what he's doing up there, so I'm gonna relax the wire, put a little bit of slack in the wire, and do a right twist. So the bow comes in, the stern comes out. That will get him closer to being, and it will take some give him a little bit of slack, so he can take in his head back. And it also helps for me to open it up. I like to open it up to about, I don't know, 30, 35, 40 degrees, and then back up. Years ago when I was breaking in, I was moving sand scows, and I didn't put enough of pinch, what we call a pinch, enough of an angle here when I backed up, and I almost the weight of the wire pulled me right into the bow of the barge. Could have been disastrous, but I got really lucky on that one, so always made sure that I get enough there. So I've got an angle now, and I'm paying out wire. You can see the drum is paying out wire. I'm backing out in front of the barge. And now I can't just like back all the way to everywhere I have to go. I have to spin around, come around 180 degrees. And the problem with this is that I'd like to be backing on my port engine and coming ahead on my starboard engine right now. The problem is that I'm dumping wire. So I do that, I get the thing swinging as much as I can, but then when the wire gets close to getting over to the wheel, I stop using that, what we call the inboard wheel, the wheel that is next to the wire there, and I just try to push the thing around with the outboard engine, which is much harder to do because of the angles involved. It's funny because I'm sure that there are a bunch of guys that have been towing for a while that might see this video and say, man, he's crazy. Nobody ever gets a wire in their wheel. And I hope to keep that the case. But anyway, there's the barge. It's coming into position right now. Now there's a problem that is the case on many tugboats, and that's that the rubber fenders that they have that go around the stern of the barge, right about where the Texas bar meets there, they'll have two of these rubber fenders that like meet, and so the wire pulling around the edge will go, and then it falls into where those two are welded together, and it's kind of a groove, and so you can get the wire stuck there, and it's an Achilles heel. It really sucks when it happens, but it happens, and you just have to deal with it. So you can see I'm trying to, right now, there we go, I'm trying to find the wire, and what that means is that I've dumped a bunch of wire out on the bottom, and now as it comes into it, I can't really see it because it's nighttime, so I see the wire moving. I go over and pick up a donut. Now we've got a donut, and now I can start paying out wire. And at this point, I'll probably have my mate in the lower wheelhouse watching the chart plotter, and he might tell me, Tim, you need to come left, you need to come right, or whatever he tells me, or I might tell him, okay, you take over the steering, and then I'll handle the throttles and the winch. And you want to do those two together, because if he can't see what's happening with the wire, and I can't see where we're headed, so that's why we use the two of us. And it's very important that I don't just take off and then have, snatch into the wire, because the forces that are at play are enough to really do some damage, break the wire, tear stuff up on deck, and that sort of stuff. So right now we're slowly putting way on the barge. When I got out in front of it, I wanted to have the barge essentially stopped. Now that I'm going ahead, I can see one green light, so that means that it's facing over towards my port side. If I was seeing the red light, then it would be facing towards the starboard side, because I'm looking backwards. But right now I'm looking, and I'm just paying out wire, trying to balance between giving it enough pressure so that it stays straight behind me, but not enough pressure that it overspeeds the winch. And I want to pay out as much wire as I can so that I don't run into trouble when I get out in that Caribbean swell, and not enough that the catenary goes down and actually touches the bottom. We don't want that either. So as is usually the case, it's always a delicate balancing act. But that's about it. Right here I'm going to probably put out 4.5 or 5 lays, and we go off to wherever we're going. I can't even remember where we went after this. I think we went to St. Croix and got a load over there. I'm pretty sure that's what we did after this. Right now what you see the chief is doing is he's setting up that soft line, and you see those two things that the wire runs right in between, those two black things on deck? So those are what we call the shivs. They're great big pulleys that go to either end of the push gear here. So now that we're away and we're starting to go, I'm doing this. The guys on deck are setting the push gear up on the forward H-bit, and they put it there and they tie it off, and then we put the soft line onto the push gear, and I'll end up tightening that up. And we just do that so that there's no chance that it will ever go overboard. There have been cases where the push gear has fallen overboard in rough seas, and it's never going to go. It's connected to something, so you're not going to lose the whole thing. But the problem is, it can get sucked into your wheel, and that we've gone over how bad that would be. So right now the chief is down. It looks like he's close to the wire, but he's probably about 4 foot underneath it, bent over like that. So he's setting up the. He's tying the soft gear. I say tying, but he's doing it with a shackle. The soft line on the suitcase drum to the push gear. Then I'll tighten that up, and as we get a little bit further, well, I probably put. I think that's 2.5 lays right there. A little bit more than 2.5 lays out. And so I'm about halfway of where I want to be, but I can't put out all the wire right in the harbor because there's enough draft in the harbor for that, and you don't want the thing that far behind you while you're towing where traffic is. So I'll do this, and then once we start heading out of the channel, and as soon as we come around El Morro, the fort that guards the entrance to San Juan there, you really start feeling the swell. And at that point, I'll be reducing power and start dumping a lot of wire. And like I say, my mate will be steering. Here I am tightening up the push gear right now. The chief is making sure everything goes in nice and smooth so that the wire, the soft line won't bury itself when I get it tight. In other words, it won't bite in. Here it is, it's coming into the push gear now. So I'm slowly bringing it up. And like I say, that's just to tighten it up on the bit so everything's nice and tight and we won't lose anything. And that's about it. I hope you guys like this video, and thank you for coming along. It's probably not the most exciting and probably the least amount of photography we did, but we were able to get some night stuff in for you. Like I say, this was one of the first ones I shot down here, so hopefully my videos are getting better. It takes a little while to figure out your groove and figure out how you're going to film this and where you should place the cameras and that sort of stuff. I think we had a good thing going in New York, and I'm slowly developing a better thing down here, but just wanted to get this out to you. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it if you gave me a thumbs up if you liked it, and maybe subscribe, and thank you to all my patrons. Patrons are people that support the channel. They give between $2 and $5 a month, and help out with the data fees and the equipment and everything, and really appreciate it. Patrons pay the bill for everyone else. If you guys would like to be a part of that, head on over to patreon.com/TimBatSea, and I'll put a link in the description. And also, if you haven't checked out, be sure to check out my other channel, SV Paquita. I'll put a link in the description there too. You guys be safe, and as always, I'll see you guys on the one.